Hello, welcome to episode 81 of the Focus on Gaming podcast. I am Duncan and I'm joined by Tom.
How you doing?
And today we have no Martin again, so we can't do a three-way battle. So we thought, what kind of gaming two-way battle is there? And only one really stuck out, and that is the 90s big one of the Sega versus Nintendo, Megadrive / Genesis versus the super crappy Nintendo. The Super Nintendo. Guess which one I've got?
The crappy one.
Yeah. Whatever. So anybody who's God, now they're 35 years old, kind of thing now, generally, ish. So anyone probably over 40 years old is probably going to remember the heyday of them both. And if you were at school, you were either Nintendo or Sega, weren't you? And I'm going to take a wild guess that you were the big N.
Yes.
I was trying to think of a joke then, actually, because I didn't own either. I did have a best friend at the time who did have a Mega Drive. I did know one person who had a Super Nintendo, but I didn't really play around with his. But I did play enough Sega Mega Drive, I think, to warrant batting for their team. So, Tom, hang on. Super Nintendo, it came out in what year?
Good question. Didn't even think about that one.
Okay, well, I can tell you, 1990.
Okay.
But we're in the EU, so it came out in 1992.
The EU didn't exist back then, I'm pretty sure.
UK and Ireland, April the 11th, 1992. So I would have been, just coming up to my 14th birthday.
Oh.
And let's say I was given, hang on a minute, let's say £200. £200. Why should I buy your piece of crap? I mean, your Super Nintendo. Sell it to me. Sell it to 14-year-old.
Do you want me to reel off a load of stuff? Okay.
No, come on. I'm 14. I don't want a load of. But hit it with me. Give me the 30-second sales pitch.
All right. It looks better. The games are better. There's more games. It's faster. The sound's better. The controllers are better. It's got a longer shelf life. It plays Super Mario World, which is the best game ever released. Everyone knows that.
It's a damn good game. It's a damn.
I don't really need to say anything else.
So it basically.
Oh, and I just remembered. Sorry. Also, it's got the best version of Street Fighter 2.
Oh yeah, but I think we'll get onto that.
If you want to start talking about Mortal Kombat and you've got the blood, by the time we got to Mortal Kombat 2 and 3, the Super Nintendo had the best versions with blood, and it didn't.
Well, I mean, the first one had blood with once the code was found out.
Only on the Mega Drive.
No, I think it was found on the. Oh no, it was an action replay or something, wasn't it?
Action replay, yeah. But by the time we got to the second and third, Super Nintendo had the best versions with blood, with fatalities. They learnt their lessons, and So,
anyway, I don't know. Yeah, 14-year-old. You're saying it's faster and everything, but I'm 14. I'm at 14. I don't know about you, especially now that we have got 14-year-olds in our house. They think that they're adults. They don't want cartoon. They don't want Mario. They don't want cute little dinosaurs jumping around and green things eating fruit. They want blood and guts. They want the adult thing. They want Terminator. They want Michael Jackson, Moonwalker kind of thing. Because at that point he was a little less weird than he was before he died. So they wanted all that, and it was similar to now, where the difference in specs wasn't groundbreaking, but they did do very different things very well. And the Mega Drive did speed very well. It did everything fast. You know, if you wanted your little Mario man jumping around and everything, but if you wanted Sonic jumping around and you wanted a challenge, because I would still say that Sonic is harder than Mario. Sonic 2 is harder than Mario World.
You clearly haven't got to the last levels of Super Mario World.
Granted, I didn't complete Super Mario World until I was, I think, 44. But then again, Sonic 2.
Yeah.
I think the only way I've ever actually completed that is by cheating. Yeah. It's a difficult one because you got the code to, and you could unlock all the levels, you could unlock the debug mode. That's the thing, you see. They treat you like adults. They give you a code, which means you can mess around with the game.
But then you've got F-Zero, which was the fastest racing game on the market at the time.
Virtua Racing 3D! 3D!
Which was categorically crap on the Megadrive.
But it was 3D!
So was Star Fox. And that was true 3D. Actually, the Megadrive wasn't capable of doing 3D at all. The Megadrive needed a specialized chip. And it ran at a crap pace. Whereas,
Star Fox had
the Super FX chip, but it ran at a decent pace and it looked great. You needed extended hardware like the Mega CD, the 32X. Shall we keep building that Tower of Power to run it?
Get Sonic 3.
Yeah.
If you wanted Sonic 3 and Knuckles,
you had to have it all. So. And then there was the adapter as well.
See, they pioneered DLC.
Did they? Because Super Nintendo had the Satellaview as well, which downloaded games before.
Excuse me, you've had Sega Game Channel, I think.
But that came out after the Satellaview, where you could download full games on a cartridge and keep them. So,
like Sega Channel, you had 50 games. You had a cartridge that you plugged into, I presume, the phone line or whatever. And you could have 50 games straight to your console.
There were hundreds on the Satellaview network, and you didn't have to pay for it. Whereas the Sega Channel, you did.
Hang on, I'm just came out in 1995. There you go, Sega Channel. Here we go. Came out in 1994. Boom! So basically they did similar things, but so that'd be Sega Channel was a year earlier. Obviously Sega Channel, I never experienced that myself.
Hang on a minute. Super Nintendo.
Satellaview. It was peripheral. In 1995.
I know, I owned one.
Released April 23rd, 1995. Sega Channel, launch date December 14th, 1994. So it's 4 months earlier.
I thought it would. It didn't come online fully until much later on. I'm going to take your word for it, but I
if you go on the Wayback Machine, or if you go to sega.com/channel. Then technically you could still see Sega Channel because there's a Wayback Machine of it.
It was Satellaview was discontinued in 2000, so that doesn't still exist. But the device, I bought the device.
Well, no, it was Sega Channel was discontinued in 1998.
I had a Satellaview and I connected it to the bottom of my Super Nintendo at the time just because it looked great, but I never could use it, obviously. But you can download all the ROMs now.
Was it a crap experience though? I mean, I know you're trying to sell the Super Nintendo.
I never used the Satellaview because it wasn't out in the UK.
Oh, so
it was a Japanese
some kind of import that didn't work.
Yeah, I found it online for about 20 quid, so I just bought the device. So.
Okay, so we've established obviously that Sega Channel was better because it was earlier,
and worked in the UK.
Worked in the UK. Well, there you go. Oh, I just deleted that. I can't even see if it did. But yes, but yeah. Let's get on to the whole Mortal Kombat because that shows a bigger thing with the Genesis. The Genesis, basically, their whole thing was Sega does what Nintendo don't, wasn't it?
Mm.
Because Nintendo, similar to now, that they have a massive hammer ready to strike down anybody who put anything moderately offensive on their consoles.
Yeah, not so much nowadays, but yeah,
Not
back in
so
the
much
day,
nowadays
definitely.
because they've realised. I mean, there is still a certain limit, but they're less strict nowadays. But yeah, things like Mortal Kombat. So Mortal Kombat came out on every 16-bit console, but it was it no blood, or I can't remember, or did they do like a Carmageddon
It
and
was
make
like
it green?
sweat. It was
Was
like
it
sweat.
because the Carmageddon was the original one that was it came out on PC, and when it came to I think was it consoles? I think it was like PlayStation 1 or something, and they turned all the humans into zombies and turned all the blood into green.
That's it.
But I think they similarly put in a code that turned it back to normal, which was humans and blood. But that was literally a game where you walked around, drove around, killing people. But Mortal Kombat, yeah, you couldn't do fatalities, you couldn't do blood, and I still remember it in the playground. That was the big thing. It was like, oh,
Yeah.
how's your Super Nintendo? Have you seen any blood in it? Oh no, of course you haven't.
It was a big thing. It definitely was. But when we talk about
It was bigger than it should have been because it was still Mortal Kombat.
yeah,
It was just Mortal Kombat's biggest selling point over Street Fighter 2, which was inherently a better game, was that it had the fatalities.
yeah, which the Super Nintendo didn't have at all.
Which the Super Nintendo didn't have.
No.
So it's like, hang on, we've got Street Fighter 2 and we've got Mortal Kombat with no fatalities and no blood. Which are you going to buy? And
Yeah.
of course, then, and much to everybody's surprise at the time, because I remember everybody, Super Nintendo, it was this big, we've got Street Fighter 2, and you will never get it because your paltry console cannot handle the thing. And then not only did they bring out Street Fighter 2, but they brought out Street Fighter 2 Hyper Edition.
With the bosses. Actually, no, they brought out Championship Edition.
Championship Edition, yes.
Yeah, with the
because
bosses.
then was it Hyper Edition then came out on Super Nintendo.
Yeah, so we got Turbo Edition, which also had the bosses and it had the turbo function. And then I think you guys got the Hyper Edition.
Because you could put the on the title screen the little stars, and you could put the stars up. But if you put it right up, I mean, it was just. For someone like me, it was unplayable because it was just too fast.
So the downside,
Chun-Li's little leg. Not only was it going fast, but it was going even faster than the door. Everything was
But the downside of the Genesis version of, and we should probably put this in context. So let's just quickly overview this, and then I'll get to my point. So the Super Nintendo processor allowed for 512 by 448 pixels. 256 colors simultaneously in a palette of 32,000 and a Mode 7 graphics. Whereas the
Mode
Genesis,
7 was the big thing, wasn't it? Because it meant it could do parallax kind of thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But it was almost pseudo 3D. Like the F-Zero is probably the best, and Mario Kart are the best demonstrations of them.
Yeah, or Axlay was a really good one as well. But the Genesis had 320 by 224 pixels, 64 colors on screen, a palette of 512. And it lacked Mode 7. So, to my point, the Street Fighter on the Genesis had smaller characters, less detail, quite a dark palette. The sound was terrible. And so, although, yes, you did get the bosses, everything else lacked. And it never really improved. Didn't matter what version you got, which was a shame. And the controllers were not built for Street Fighter, because it didn't have enough buttons, which made doing the special moves really difficult. So they actually released a different controller just to accommodate Street Fighter on the Megadrive. Whereas the Super Nintendo had the Sony SPC 700 sound chip, which was far superior. It got the detail, it got the vocalization, the digital voicing. The sprites were spot on. Although not arcade perfect, it was about as good as you get until you got to the 3DO being released. And it was just a great game, really. Obviously, the American version was always faster because we had in America it was NTSC, whereas in the UK we had PAL, which was considerably slower.
Theirs is 29. Whereas there was 29 frames per second, and ours is 24.
Yeah.
Obviously nowadays it's not, but generally that was the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But all in all,
so that's why you have on TVs, especially when you have power and everything, you have 50 or 60 hertz generally.
Yeah.
Because it was double both of the regions.
There was a cheat actually on the Action Replay cartridge where you could play. It was quite a long cheat you had to put in, but you could play the bosses on the original Street Fighter game, but they were only in silhouette. Yeah, I know.
It was a bit really like weird. A left-in thing that they didn't quite finish.
Yes, basically, yeah.
But you talk about arcades.
Yeah.
Let's face it. If you wanted arcade games, you went on the Genesis.
You did.
Look at Golden Axe was obviously the big one. I remember putting pounds and pounds and pounds into Golden Axe in the arcade. And when my friend got Golden, he got Golden Axe with his Megadrive, and we were just like, it's like the arcade, and obviously it wasn't, but it was really. It wasn't that far away. It's like going from. It was like going from the Xbox One to the Xbox Series X or the PS4 to PS5 kind of thing. You're like, oh, it looks prettier, but at the same time, quite a lot of things look okay. They still look good. And that was the thing. Golden Axe, you were like, whoa, it's an arcade game when it's at home. And when you did actually, if you literally went and played an arcade and then came home and played the Mega Drive, you're like, ooh. Oh yeah, that doesn't look good. But it played exactly the same. You thought in your head it looked the same. And then you had Afterburner as well, which of course, did you ever play the 360 rolling all over the place one? Not Space Area. What's the one? What's the game? The Afterburner.
I did play it. I had it on the Amstrad as well as playing it on the Mega Drive.
Well, I can imagine that was awful.
Actually, you know what? It wasn't that bad. I was quite surprised.
Quite surprised doesn't say you were that pleased though.
Do you know what? I didn't really like it that much on the Mega Drive, but the arcade was brilliant because it went
Afterburner was one of those things where you either had the single stick arcade game where you could just aim and shoot, or it had a completely 3D 360 degree movement, like where you had to be strapped in version of the game. It was very rare. I think you had to go to like special arcades in London or cities near you kind of thing, or and it was very expensive. But that was an arcade game that you could play, and suddenly it was at home, and it was, I suppose, again, it wasn't 3D like your Star Fox or your Virtua Racing, but it was I'll put it in inverted commas here, 3D game where you could fly around and shoot.
Yeah,
and it just made your jaw drop. The fact that you were playing these things at home. Now, again, you did have, like I said, Space Harrier, and also Final Fight. That was a better version on
the Super Nintendo.
Was it better? Was it?
The Super Nintendo got all 3 Final Fight games. In fact, now they were quite a lot of money, and they were far superior.
Wasn't the Super Nintendo the one that didn't get all of the fighters?
No, we got all 3 because I owned them. So,
okay.
And they were really good.
What was the console that had the terrible version?
The Mega Drive. No, I think wasn't it the Master System?
Oh, I don't know.
And obviously, we got Turtles in Time, whereas you got another version, which was a bit weird. And then we got the Tournament Fighters as well. So, yeah.
But then, if we're going to go fighters, obviously, easily.
I feel like you're struggling now.
Easily, no. Streets of Rage. I mean, it's so good that they brought out a 4th version last year before.
Yeah.
Because they were just so good.
We got Killer Instinct, and ours was a better version than yours.
See, Killer Instinct was, it's again. Oh, I could play Killer Instinct, or I could play Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, it was definitely like that.
Or I could play Mortal Kombat. Because also, what was the terrible Clay Fighters? That wasn't very good.
Clay Fight was good, and also, and what was that one with the dinosaurs?
Yes.
I don't remember the name of that one. I know it was very good. Great game though, and they were like stop motion graphics, so good. Obviously, we had like things. If we really want to go down the route of great games, let me give you a run off a few. We had Chronos Trigger, Legends of Zelda, Final Fantasy.
Yeah, some good ones. Yeah.
Mega Man X. We had Secrets of Mania. We had Contra 3, Donkey Kong 1, 2, and 3. We had Terranigma, Castlevania. I mean,
Castlevania said, I mean, they're literally called. I mean, Super Nintendo obviously had Metroid as well, which
it was all Super Metroid, wasn't it?
Which nowadays they are called Metroidvanias.
We just had so many great games. I mean, even in the early days, we had things like Super Ghouls and Ghosts, which is obviously an old game.
That was on everything though. I mean, a version of it was on everything.
Super Turrican, that was good.
If you want running and gunning, Gunstar Heroes, probably some of the best graphics on the Megadrive.
It was good. It was
Gunstar Heroes, because it was the first game that used. I still remember, because Mode 7 was a big thing that everyone who had a Super Nintendo was like, we got Mode 7. Look at how games like F-Zero and things could work. But then Gunstar Heroes, they did some weird magic that just made the background move as like Mode 7 was on it, but it was a Mega Drive exclusive. And I still remember that. I look at videos of it now, and I played it on my Steam Deck, and I just go, was this really that impressive? But it was at the time. It was absolutely amazing, and it got sort of 9 out of 10s, 10 out of 10s.
Yeah.
Although that everywhere was rated out of 100 back in those days, wasn't it? It was. You never got out of 10s or out of 5s.
We had some great magazines as well, didn't we? We had like Super Pro, Super Nintendo Pro magazine, and there was just CVG magazine and Nintendo.
I preferred all the multi-platform ones. Although I'm trying to sell mine, which, let's face it, mine was cooler. Yeah, it was cooler. It was for adults. It had more sports on it. It had Joe Montana, Sports Talk Football, all the Americans would love, because back in those days, British people actually, because there wasn't many sports games, if a sport game came out, we actually played it.
I'll give you one thing.
Joe Montana, Sports Talk.
You did have the
commentary.
You did have the best version of PGA Tour Golf.
Yeah. I mean, that was obviously multi-platform, but yes, they were quite different. Yes.
And you had Mickey Mouse Castle of Illusion, which was amazing. So I'll give you those ones. But then we got another version.
Fantasy Star?
Yeah, but...
Oh, apparently we did have Castlevania Bloodlines. There you go. And that was exclusive to Genesis and Mega Drive. Yeah.
See, by the time we got to the end of the shelf life of the machine, you guys were doing the Tower of Power and Sega was falling apart. And we had the Super FX chip, the Super FX chip 2. Then it had another chip that went in it as well. So we got Super Street Fighter 2. We got the new challenges as well. We had Donkey Kong 1, 2, and 3. We had Super Mario 3, not 3D, Super Mario RPG, which was like a 3D thing. I mean, we had some.
Yeah, do you know what you didn't have, because you were being controlled by the big N?
Go on.
Road Rash.
That's true, but we had another,
because you could get chains and bash people to death on motorbikes. Oh, go on.
I'm Googling because I can't remember the name of it. But we had,
Well, I'll
aside
say
from
one.
Mario Kart, we had
a proper adult game that actually was really cute as well because it was really hard. Echo the Dolphin. Such a good-looking game. I mean, that was
we had Rock and
easily...
Roll Racing. That was a good one.
Oh, that was like a single screen, wasn't it? And you just had like
very, very good game. But we had another one where
good game.
There was a racing game where you actually you go around and burn people off the tracks and all things like that. I can't remember.
Oh no, Rock and Roll Racing wasn't single screen. It was a
actual carnage, and I can't remember the name of it.
I don't know. Violent Racer on the SNES. Speed Racer? No, I don't think that was particularly violent.
No.
Dirt Racer? RPM Racing?
No, I can see a screenshot of it, but it doesn't tell me the name of the game. Very annoying. Right, let's have a look here.
Stunt Racer.
Stunt Racer used the FX chip. So we've got Rock and
Chase
Roll
HQ?
No, that was a terrible game. Nigel Mansell's F1 Challenge.
Oh, you see, that was another one that came out on Megadrive, and it was quite good. It was arcade.
We had Battle Cars.
It was on SNES as well.
So,
if you were to say it was more about the games or more about being the power, what if I said one or the other for the SNES? What would be the sales pitch if I said no, you can't advertise the hardware if you say it's the game? Is there
the SNES beat the Mega Drive hands down? I mean, there wasn't really anything that came. All right, yes, you had your Streets of Rage, your Shining Force, your Sonic the Hedgehogs, but then we had Super Mario World, Chrono Trigger, Legends of Zelda. We had Super Mario Kart.
Yeah, great RPGs, but Sega Mega Drive. And if you had both, obviously you had the choice of both of them. And RPGs was a strong point, but you had your Fantasy Star games. Yeah. You had your Star Control on Mega Drive,
but none of it beats Legends of Zelda. Come on now.
Well, we've had Zelda specials and stuff before, and we talked about the fact that Zelda. These were all the 2D Zeldas, weren't they? So the NES and the Super Nintendo ones were the 2D ones, and yeah, they were good. They were good, especially for the time.
Let's do a little spec.
Now I'm just trying to think of something that I could go right. This will stand up to the Legend of Zelda.
There isn't anything.
Oh, Earthworm Jim? No, because that's just really a platformer. That was a fantastic game.
While you're thinking, I'm going to do a spec comparison. So RAM, 64K of RAM in the Mega Drive, 128K of RAM in the Super Nintendo.
And I think the 128 as well was also for... there was separate, I think. Just looking it up, there was 128 kilobytes of general purpose work RAM, which is separate from the 64 kilobyte dedicated to the video subsystem. So it only had 64 kilobytes of graphics RAM, but equally it had 64 kilobytes dedicated to the audio and 128 kilobyte general. So it was better.
So also, the Mega Drive used the 6800 Motorola chip, which was 7.67 megahertz, whereas the SNES was 3.58, which obviously meant the Genesis had a better CPU.
I'm looking actually the 64 kilobyte of graphics RAM in the Mega Drive as well, but only had 8 kilobytes of audio RAM and only 64 kilobytes of general.
You had more channels though on the Mega Drive. You had 10 channels. We didn't have that.
But
But your chip was
channels.
but your chip was shit, so don't worry about it. So overall, the Super Nintendo sold 49.10 million sales worldwide. The Genesis sold 30 million.75 worldwide. So all in all,
because it's adults that bought it. You know, adults were like, "I want a game." It was the first one that adults could go, "I'm proud to be a gamer."
But then we still sold more.
Yeah, because you had loads of kids going, "Mummy, I want to be a little plumber from Italy that goes, it's a me, Mario." So you know, I mean, obviously, yeah, you did have your F-Zeros and your Mortal Kombats,
yeah, we won
and your whatnot. But generally, I mean,
and we had more
Mega Drive
games.
was more. It had more adult games.
It was
Not
for the
adults as in
teenagers,
porn
wasn't it?
games. Yeah, yeah.
It
So
was for the
14-year-old me much preferred the Mega Drive. That's right. I'm just looking at Jungle Strike and Desert Strike. Two
they were good.
Fantastic games. And
we had those on the Super Nintendo though, just slightly later.
Eventually.
And they were better.
They were bloody hard games though in the later levels.
They were. Do you know what? I remember having an argument with a friend of mine because I made friends with someone that worked on one of the magazines, and I said to them that we're going to get a new version of Jungle Strike, but it was going to be something else. It was going to be another battle thing, and I got absolutely hammered for that. And then we did get a sequel that was not based in the jungle; it was based somewhere else. I can't remember what it was. I don't know if you can look that one up.
We had Urban Strike as well.
That was it, Urban Strike. And yeah, but I got hammered. They were like, "Oh, you don't know anything. You don't know anything." Proper hammered for about a month for that, and then all of a sudden it comes out, and I was like, "Told ya." So,
unfortunately, it came out sort of at the end of the sort of 2D sort of lifespan, really, when people were all like, "No, it's 2D. I don't care." So, but I mean, they were all three very good. Desert Strike was sort of the original, very good one, but Jungle Strike was just as good.
Jungle Strike on the Game Boy was very good as well, actually, thinking about it.
They were all very much, because obviously it was detection on a pixel scale. Quite often you could just sort of quickly tap, say you just went one pixel ahead until eventually you shot something and then they couldn't shoot back. So quite often you'd have to do that because it was just really hard. If you went in there and just three things started shooting at you, that was it. You were done. Shadowrun. Had that come out on Mega Drive? I don't know if that came out on SNES. Turrican, Mega Turrican.
Oh, Super Turrican was so good, much better than the Genesis version. And Shadowrun did come out on the Super Nintendo.
Mega Turrican was an evolution, it says here.
Yeah, but
Turrican from the SNES.
Super Turrican
more action, more levels, more bosses, and the techno soundtrack music sets a nice mood for shooting up a bunch of alien invaders.
Yeah, but still,
it had worse visuals and sound compared to Super Turrican on the SNES.
There you go. So we had Shadowrun, by the way, and it was far better rated than the one on the Mega Drive. So,
and here's a classic one from quite early in the Mega Drive time: Strider.
Oh, yeah, good.
That again, another one that was I saw the first level a lot of times.
I'm going to give you one win for the Mega Drive. RoboCop versus Terminator was far better on the Mega Drive compared to the Super Nintendo. So well done, Mega Drive.
Well, and then eventually things that you had first on the Genesis or the Mega Drive, Flashback.
Yeah,
I remember that coming out. That would just, I think that blew everybody's mind with the fluid polygons.
Yeah,
and how it worked. And again, it was like the Gunstar Heroes thing. It was like, how did they do that? Now, unfortunately, it hasn't fared very well because it's quite unintuitive. Flashback.
we had the Super Scope. You had the Menace gun.
Yeah.
We had the mouse from Mario Paint.
I say the Super Scope, I think, was better, wasn't it?
I think it was, but it was still shit. We had the Super Scope and the Super Advantage arcade stick, which was outstanding for Street Fighter. We even had an exercise bike. Yeah.
Right. I just started playing a video by accident.
And we had a baseball bat for interactive games.
You had a baseball bat?
Baseball bat, and yeah, as I said, I don't know if you heard it. I said we had the exercise bike as well, which is very rare.
Had an exercise bike.
I know you'd be able
On
to cycle in the
16 bits.
game. Yep, you'd be able to cycle in the game and try and win the race. It's very rare, but very cool.
I'm just gonna Google that because that sounds great. Exertainment bike. Oh, okay.
Now, they were both working on VR headsets for both machines. And the Sega one was far further along than the Nintendo version. But because graphically it was pretty naff,
Terrible.
they shelved it in the end. And obviously, both systems were working on both systems worked on a CD add-on. You guys got the Megadrive CD, Sega CD, which flopped.
The Super Nintendo got the PlayStation 1.
Yeah, and Super Nintendo partnered with Sony. That flopped, and just before they were about to show the machine off, because it was ready to go, before they showed the machine off at the Gaming Expo, they did the dirty on Sony and
that was there's a whole I've read the story of this. Like I've read it in the book that we reviewed, The Curious Video Game Machines, and whatnot, and other places as well. And yeah, I mean, Nintendo were
ruthless.
Pretty big dicks to Sony. And Sony, I mean, Nintendo are still laughing, but Sony are now the hardware kings. I mean, the PlayStation 2.
I mean,
PlayStation 2 is still, for now, the biggest selling, only because they've suddenly found 10 million sales.
Just as the Switch is biting
their ankle. Just as the Switch is about to overtake them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the PlayStation 5 is obviously, completely outselling the Xbox Series consoles. It was a bit of a dirty. Yeah, so you did get to play CD games with the Megadrive, but only if you paid extra. So you got to play the delights that are Night Trap and
which was the CDI original.
Sylphied, that was a good. That was like Star Fox, but better graphics.
Sewer Shark.
Quite a lot of FMV games.
Another CDI original.
Did you get to play? Oh, that was the shooting the cowboy game.
Oh, Mad Dog McCree.
McCree.
It did come out on the Sega CD, but it was really crap and really small.
Was it controller only, or was it?
No, it had a gun, had a light gun. That was naff as well. Now this is the interesting thing. It was so bad, it was worse than the CDI version.
Was the CDI version particularly bad?
Graphically, it was phenomenal, but it was
because it was CDs, early CDs, so
it was shit. Over to that, mainly because of the light gun. But but obviously the Mega Drive had Lethal Enforcers, just like the Super Nintendo. Both used a light gun. Generally, the Super Nintendo had the better controller for the gun, but graphically, the Mega Drive had the better version of the game. But yeah, Sega CD-wise, you had Sonic CD, which was the best Sonic ever, as far as I'm concerned.
It ran just as fast as the others. If it sometimes got a bit faster going around all the crazy loops and everything. But I think the main thing is that the worlds were more pretty. So it was it was like with the Super Nintendo as well. With not the Super Street Fighter and all this. The further it got into its lifetime and different generations, the prettier the backgrounds got. Whereas the characters pretty much still look the same. Yeah,
I mean, Terminator, that was a good example on the Sega CD. It had better music, slightly better graphics, and extra levels. But the disappointing thing I would say about the Sega CD is a lot of the games were ports of things that had come out on the CDI, and that was unfortunate because it was a straight port. You had and the 3DO as well. So you had like Rebel Assault. So Star Wars Rebel Assault was a
Rebel
port.
Assault, yeah,
That was a port from the 3DO. You had Mist, which was a port from the CDI. Sewer Shark, CDI. Sorry, no, 3DO. There was a number of them anyway, but they were all essentially ports from.
Yeah, Sega CD. There was lots of problems with the Sega going the CD route. Hardware wise and software wise, there wasn't that killer game because people, even with
No.
say Sonic CD, people were like, well, I've got Sonic 3 as well, so why would I want that?
Yeah.
And it did just basically look like a faster version of 2 and 3.
Yeah, and it was a very expensive system.
Oh yeah.
And obviously you got to the Sega CD2 and the Megadrive 2 and the various iterations.
The
But
Wonder Mega and all that.
I think they got uglier with age. I like the originals,
Mega Drive 1 or 2?
Mega Drive 1
Yeah,
and
the
Mega
original.
CD 1 for me
What about
were the best.
the Super Nintendo US or UK and
I've owned them
Japan?
both. I must admit, I do like the American version of the Super Nintendo.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's all like purple and blocky and
Yeah, I like it.
Oh no,
That was always my
no.
go-to. But yeah, I don't know. I did prefer it.
I think a lot of people don't realise that they looked different in the UK and the US.
Vastly
So
different.
well, obviously it's not just the UK. It was the PAL and Japan version was like a grey mostly, but the controller was the same shape, the same size, and everything, but it had the multicolor, the yellow, green, blue, and red buttons. But the shape was smoother. It was a lot smoother and rounded. Whereas the American version had a purple aesthetic. I don't know whether that was a legal thing or whether it is actually a design choice.
I have no idea.
I don't
It was
know
very
why.
strange.
But yeah, it had the 4 buttons. You had 2 light purple and 2 dark purple, which the dark purple was the same button as same color as the reset and power button on the Famicom, and it was much sharper corners. And I just think it's ugly.
Oh, I loved it. And interestingly, the Japanese version was called the Super Famicom, sorry, whereas the UK version was the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
And prior to the end of its life, they released the Super Nintendo Junior, which didn't work with a lot of the chips that work with Star Fox and things like that. And it was just diabolical, if I'm honest. It was an awful looking machine.
I mean, the Super Nintendo, if I was to buy that, I would be glad I didn't live in the US, because that was just an ugly box that looked more like something from the 80s.
But have you looked at the Junior?
SNES Junior. Oh, it's like, it looks like some kind of medical device.
Yeah.
So it's not even that much smaller, really. It's just like they chopped a bit off the front, put the buttons on the same side, and made it all white with 2 purple buttons.
Yeah, it was just terrible. So now
it looks like some kind of I need to plug this in to make my heart go fast.
Yeah. I did collect a Super Nintendo. I had lots of Mega Drive as well, but I liked collecting box variants of the console. So I used to collect box variants of Super Nintendo. I had about 19 or 20 variants, from Donkey Kong Crate to Super Mario World, Street Fighter 2 box, Street Fighter Turbo, all sorts of ones. And I mean, some of them now collect so much money, like international cricket. with the console. Had a very unique box to it, and that was an Australian exclusive, which reaches now anything from 600 Australian dollars to 1,200.
Nice.
Whereas
You got it?
no, never got it. The Super Mario SNES, the PAL version, came with the console, is one of the rarest ones you can get, and I've never found one. Always wanted one. And then you go up to things like the Killer Instinct box that came with a CD that goes for about 300, and it's just crazy. Like the different variants are incredible. So, and every country got different ones. So you even had like a Formula One Spanish racer that had his own variant of the Super Nintendo. Whereas Mega Drive got the Aladdin box set, the Lion King box set, and things
Probably
like
had
that.
a lot of deals with Disney.
That's it.
Yeah. If we're going to go by looks, now you see the Mega Drive. I think they went from the Mega Drive to the Mega Drive 2 or the Genesis to the Genesis 2. Now the first one was a bit sort of 80s style. Looked good. It looked like it had a CD case. It had that round bit on the top, which was where the cartridges went. So it didn't have CDs. But then they updated it to the Mega Drive 2, which didn't do anything different. Obviously, probably had slightly different innards, but they made it more curvy, and it was a bit like actually what the Famicom Junior was trying to be, but the Sega Mega Drive 2 actually looked sexier as opposed to the Junior, which looked like a medical device. So if I was to go on a parent going, oh, which one of those looks? Oh, well, you'd go for the colourful one. So if you're in the US, you probably would have gone for the Mega Drive 2, I think, because that looked better than the Famicom Junior, the purple square box. But if you're in the UK, I don't know how I'd sell it. It's black, so it's cooler, and it was all black Mega Drive 2. There was a little bit of colour on the first Mega Drive or the Genesis, but I think if I was trying to sell that to a parent of a child in the UK, probably Super Nintendo would have been the one that caught their eye more. I'll admit that, but I'm a 14-year-old. I wanted the cool black thing because I'm 14 and I'm dark and I hate everyone.
I've just remembered something. You could also play Game Boy games on the Super Nintendo, and
only with an adapter.
Yeah, with the Super Game Boy adapter, but most people owned a Game Boy, so to be able to
play your Master System adapter, didn't you, for the Mega Drive as well?
You did, yeah, but no one wanted to play Master System games on the Mega Drive.
I'm going to get the Master System adapter so I can play Sonic.
Yeah, whereas everyone wanted to play Game Boy games in color. So when you got to go up and play them on the SNES, you could play them in color, which was fantastic. So, yeah.
Was it the power-based converter? So you could get third-party ones as well.
You could. So I think we've established
that the Mega Drive was better. Excellent. Right. If you want to join us on the next episode,
I think we've established.
I don't think we're
Super Nintendo is the best.
No, I don't think. I think just like us when we were 14-year-old on the playground, it would just be mine's better. Mine's better. Yeah, but mine's got this. For everything you say, I can say something. For everything I say, you can say something. So I will admit that yours isn't crap.
And I will admit that you had the better version of the PGA Tour Golf, and that's it. So
now, if I was
if you carry on, you only found the corner. I'm going to vandalise your car.
Well, nowadays, if you said is £100, you can have either one, or you can only have one of them.
Super Nintendo. I have a Mega Drive in the loft. So
now you see, do you know what? I should have thought about this earlier because now I've got to sit here and think about all the things. Now, you see, I'm still not a big Nintendo buff. I'm still somebody who goes, yeah, Mario's all right. Yeah, Zelda's all right. But Oh, 46-year-old me would probably want. Actually, would probably want the easiest thing. So probably I would go for the Super Nintendo. But equally, I would sit there going, "Oh, but I could have been playing Streets of Rage 2 right now."
You actually can, because someone did a ROM hack of it and put it on the Super Nintendo. So,
yeah, but you'd have to get a cartridge from nowadays time that could take ROMs. Whatever. So I probably would go for games that are easier, and Sonic 2, although it's great fun to put the various codes in and debug mode and all that kind of thing, actually to complete it without modern day emulation and save states, it's a really hard game. And Mario is hard. I'm not denying that. It has its moments where it's pretty tricky. I mean, it's not tough, but it is easier than Sonic, I would say. And I can play things like Zelda, 2D Zeldas. Yeah. So there you go. You've sold me. You've sold 46-year-old me a Super Nintendo.
And I've just found Super Mario Grand Prix pack on eBay for 5,200 Australian dollars. I'm going to send you a link. Here we go. You can have a look at this.
Only if you've got £500, you can get Sega Nomad.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, it's crap. But so, yeah, was there a portable Super Nintendo? I don't think so.
Yes, there is actually. Yeah.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, but it wasn't made by Nintendo.
I was going to say, was there an official portable?
No.
But this was the Sega Genesis Nomad. 6 AA batteries, and you've got a Sega Megadrive in your hands.
Worse. It was actually it was worse than the Sega Game Gear in terms of battery life. So, yeah.
Literally, you couldn't take it out because it'd be like, "Yay, fresh batteries in there!" Walk out the door. No, I'm going to go back and change them.
Absolutely horrendous.
But for £500-ish of your good, well-earned money, you could own one. I don't think I'd particularly want to, because let's face it, they're not designed for that tiny screen. So as soon as you get any writing on there, you're not going to be able to read it.
No,
because it was a teeny tiny little screen, and as you said, you need to sit by a plug. There was no point in you doing it in batteries. So what's the point in having a portable one when you can play it? So have I tempted you that maybe getting a Mega Drive would be a good idea, but not necessarily over a Super Nintendo?
No, because I've got one in the loft already, and I've also
I mean 14-year-old you that hasn't got a Mega Drive. No, would you still be going? Nintendo,
I've also got a Mega Drive Mini as well, so no, and the graphics weren't as good, so no. But I'm going.
You were an arsehole in the playground, weren't you?
I was. I generally always won as well. So,
well, not seeing another side isn't winning.
It's always winning.
No. I
appreciate your love of it, but I'm
sorry. And it's better. Well, yeah. So, and on that note, that's episode 81. Hopefully, Martin will be back next week, and we'll try our Sega versus Nintendo again, but with the added bonus of a pointless third person.
The Atari Lynx.
The Atari Lynx.
He'll be like, "What have you got to say for yourself?" Not a lot.
I think it will basically be like your kind of like you said in the playground. But I will just be going, "Well, you're stupid. This is good."
Yeah, that'd be about right.
Because let's face it. I don't think we need to keep that a surprise that the Atari Lynx will not win.
No,
I don't think anybody's going to go, "Oh, yeah, do you know what? Those all first-party games, published games, and nothing else, and also almost as bad battery life as the Game Gear, is going to convince me. But anyway, that's for next week, hopefully.
Yes.
Right. Focusongaming.co.uk and join us for a review or comments on our posts and whatnot. And hopefully we'll see you for episode 82. And on that note, thank you, Tom. And
see you
next week. Bye.